Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. If you've been stressing over a massive mountain of study material, well, you can go ahead and put those books away. Seriously, my entire goal today is to completely replace your reading by unpacking the skeleton, the soul, and the brain of project management. We're going to cover all the work in detail, and we'll be using some great pictures and diagrams to keep you focused and entertained. Basically, by watching this explainer, you won't need to go back and learn the work on your own, because we're going to cover the whole shebang right here.
Here is exactly what we're looking at today. Number 1, the backbone of projects. Number 2, enter the matrix structure. Number 3, the power of culture. And finally, number 4, the project management office. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The backbone of projects, functional and projectized environments. Okay, so let's dive into the structural skeleton first. By definition, organizational structure is literally the backbone of daily operations. It dictates how tasks are divided up, who reports to who, and how resources are handed out. Honestly, whether you succeed or fail as a project manager often comes down to this exact framework, because it completely determines how much actual authority you hold. Now, take a look at this. This brilliantly illustrates a standard functional structure. You'll notice the executive up at the very top, right? And beneath them, functional managers who are leading these heavily siloed departments, like HR, marketing, or finance. If a project happens here, the project coordination, which is that dotted line you see, only happens way up at the management level. The actual staff in the gray boxes, they're just doing project work on top of their regular 9-to-5 day jobs. So in this functional setup, the project manager is really just a coordinator. Their authority is, well, very low. Now, sure, there are pros here. It doesn't require any big structural changes. It's super low cost since you're just using internal staff, and employees have their safe, normal department to go back to. But the cons are pretty heavy. Because functional duties always take priority, projects tend to lack focus. Decision-making is incredibly slow, and getting these siloed departments to actually talk to each other, notoriously poor. But let's contrast that with our second type, the projectized structure. In this setup, you build a dedicated, completely autonomous team, specifically for a temporary initiative. The normal functional departments basically disappear. Think about it like constructing a massive 50-story skyscraper. You absolutely do not want your engineers distracted by random departmental tasks, right? You need them full-time, totally dedicated solely to the building. So the big takeaway here is this massive power shift. In a functional setup, the PM has almost zero power. But in a projectized environment, the project manager holds ultimate authority, total budget control, and they command a fully dedicated team. This means you get lightning-fast decisions and just incredible team cohesion. The catch? Well, it's highly expensive because you end up duplicating resources across different projects. Plus, team members might get a bit anxious about what exactly happens to their jobs once the project actually ends. Moving on to part 2. Enter the matrix structure, the ultimate hybrid. So now we hit the middle ground. This is where the stability of functional departments meets the agility of dedicated projects. We call it the matrix, and it's a dual reporting hybrid. Imagine you're developing a wildly complex new smartphone. Let's call it the Vortex 5000. You need a structure where your top electrical engineers and software devs can focus entirely on designing the phone. But you also kind of want them anchored to their permanent departments for long-term technical growth. In the matrix, these employees actually report to 2 bosses, a functional manager for daily duties and a project manager specifically for the smartphone project. But hey, not all matrices are created equal. Let's start with the weak matrix. This setup keeps a really strong functional flavor. The functional manager is still the dominant one, holding all the cards when it comes to budget and resources. The project manager, they're really just a coordinator or an expediter. They're trying their absolute best to keep things moving horizontally across that dotted line, but they don't have any real actual authority. Next up, we have the balanced matrix. Now here, authority is shared right down the middle. The project manager defines exactly what needs to be done and monitors the schedule, while the functional manager controls how it gets done and assigns the specific employees. Sounds super fair, right? But in reality, this dual reporting can sometimes lead to some pretty messy power struggles and a whole lot of confusion for the poor staff caught right in the middle. Finally, we reach the strong matrix. Notice that newly created Manager of Project Department over on the far left. This shifts the balance of power firmly into the hands of a full-time project manager who now controls most of the project activities. It feels really similar to that projectized structure we talked about earlier, but those functional departments do still exist in the background.
All right, since I promised this explainer would completely replace your study materials, here is your essential cheat sheet. If you want to absolutely ace your understanding of the matrix without hitting the books, just memorize these 3 simple rules. Ready? Weak matrix means the functional manager is stronger. Balanced matrix means equal authority. Strong matrix means the project manager is stronger. Just lock that into your memory, and you're going to navigate any questions on this topic with 0 issues.
All right, part 3, the power of culture, the invisible life force. Okay, so we've built the skeleton, now we've got to examine the soul. Culture represents the shared values, the beliefs, the norms, and all those unwritten rules that dictate how people behave in a company. It's essentially an uncopyable asset. Sure, your competitors can totally steal your structural org chart, but they cannot steal your culture. And believe me, this invisible life force absolutely dictates whether your project will succeed or fail. So why does this actually matter for projects? Well, imagine a project manager is given total structural power to roll out this massive new IT system. If the organizational culture is unsupportive, meaning they're deeply risk-averse, reluctant to change, and they view projects as just an annoying extra distraction, that project is going to fail, plain and simple. Even with full structural authority, an unsupportive culture will constantly delay your progress. On the flip side, a supportive culture embraces teamwork, open communication, and innovation, which completely greases the wheels for project success. And here's something kind of fascinating. Temporary project teams actually often form their own distinct mini cultures. Because they're working so intensely together on a shared goal, they end up developing a common language and a totally unique work ethic. And what's really wonderful is that these positive traits, this strong camaraderie and collaboration, often bleed right back into the parent organization once the project concludes, slowly improving the wider company culture over time. Pretty cool, right? And that brings us to part 4, the project management office, the central nervous system. We've built the structural bones, we've explored the cultural soul, now it is time for the brain. The project management office, or PMO, is a centralized department that standardizes processes and supports project execution. But just like those matrix structures we looked at, PMOs come in 3 different authority levels. First, a supportive PMO. This is really just a helpful resource library. It gives you templates and training, but it has very low control. Then, a controlling PMO steps it up. It has moderate control, actively tracking performance, and auditing projects for compliance. Finally, you have the directive PMO. This one takes high control. It actually directly manages the projects itself, and the individual project managers literally report directly to the PMO. Now, mapping out these PMO functions in a continuous cycle brilliantly illustrates exactly how a PMO acts as the brain. You can see it covers everything from project prioritization and governance to financial support, resource training, and centralized documenting. By handling all the methodology, the quality checks, and high-level decision-making, the PMO effectively removes the administrative chaos from the individual project manager. This is huge because it allows the team to focus entirely on operational execution rather than getting completely bogged down in endless red tape. And just like that, we've managed to condense chapters and chapters of textbook theory into exactly the essential takeaways you need to know. You now understand the entire corporate ecosystem, from the functional and matrix structures to the cultural soul, right on up to the governing brain of the PMO. So the only question left for you is, knowing all of this, how are you going to leverage the skeleton, soul, and brain of your own organization to guarantee your next big project is a massive success? Keep these key points in mind and you'll absolutely be ready for anything.